On your Monday episode of Locked On Raptors, the Raptors fall in Detroit in a game that was good, bad, something in between. I have no freaking idea.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Monday, January the 13th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 11 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the Blue Sky, I guess, is the main one where I'm at right now. You can go to the show Instagram account as well. Follow there. You can also join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. Link in the description of the podcast. It's free to join. It's a great place to come hang out, talk ball, and procrastinate your daily work tasks as the people in there seem to do every day. None of these people get any work done, and I love them for it. Of course, become part of our family. Link in the description of the podcast. Free to join as always. You can also subscribe for free to the daily Locked On Raptors newsletter, which is on quite an upward trajectory right now. We're closing in on 1,200 subscribers. Thank you to those who have subscribed. You're all wonderful. And 5 days a week, you get me talking about this Raptors team, which maybe you don't want right now because they stink. But I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think it's fun. I think the blogs are good. So please go and support it. You can go to the QR code on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, or to the link in the description of the podcast to go and subscribe. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And we are off and running here on a Monday edition of the show, talking about the Raptors falling 123-114 on Saturday to the Detroit Pistons. Their fifth straight loss. They've lost a lot of games of late. I think they've won two times since December the 3rd. Not exactly rollicking times here for your Toronto Raptors. And in this game, the starters were one of the stories. We're going to talk about the starters who right now stink. And we will talk about what that means if they stink for a longer sample than we've currently got tape on for now. There's big questions that'll come out of that. We'll talk about that coming up later. We got the good, the bad, and the coming up later as well. But I want to get into just sort of my big takeaway from this game. And usually I come in here with like a hard and fast, this is my takeaway on the game. This is how I feel about the game. And today, the big takeaway I have from this game is I don't really know how the hell to feel about this basketball game, because to me, this is one of those real, is this dress black and blue or white and gold ass basketball games to me. I think you can kind of look at it from all sorts of different angles and come away with happy feelings, negative feelings, the whole 9 yards. And I think we should start with the starters, I guess. We'll get into them a little bit more depth and sort of the bigger picture questions about them. But this game began with a really flat, ugly first quarter effort from the starters. They got run off the floor essentially in the first 5-6 minutes of this game, as the Pistons just kind of bullied them around and just sort of made them their food. It was pretty tough to stomach, not great watching. And I think both defensively, offensively, there was just not a whole lot to like. They got some stuff going in transition. That was nice. But overall, pretty janky in the half court. Still kind of working out the gears and trying to get things flowing and putting a little grease and a little oil here to kind of make things move more smoothly. They had, I think, over the course of this game, a lot of really nice offensive process, a lot of possessions where the ball was humming around and it was really pretty ball. A lot of those happened when the starters were not fully on the floor and there were bench guys sprinkled in, but still there was some nice offensive process. And overall, I mean, to go back to the sort of confusing nature of this game, the Raptors lose this game. The starters do not perform well at all. And yet, I had a good time. This was a pretty damn competitive and back and forth basketball game. There was a lot of stuff that happened that was encouraging from a Raptors end of things. A lot of stuff that was not as well. And at the end of the day, if you're someone who spent your Saturday night watching this basketball game, I don't think you feel bad about it. It was a pretty entertaining game back and forth up until the end, where the Pistons kind of pulled away in the last 2 or 3 minutes. That there was, this was entertaining. This was good entertainment, which is really all you're tuning in for when you're watching an 8-31 basketball team. Again, back to the sort of, was it good or was it bad sort of conundrum. I thought Emmanuel Quickley was kind of the sort of embodiment of this sort of confusion in this game. I thought overall, like a weird game for him. I loved his 3-point aggression. He was 4 of 9 from downtown. hit a couple of pull-up looks, was looking for that shot. And as he should, he's the best above the break three-point shooter on the team. He's the best three-point shooter on the team. He should be letting him rip as much as possible. 9 attempts in this game. You love to see him knock down 4 of 9 after some struggles and some kind of crooked shooting lines since coming back into the lineup. That was really encouraging. I thought getting to the line 7 times was super encouraging for him as well. You know, the game against the Cavaliers notwithstanding, he's been getting there 3, 4, 5 times a night, and that is really great. 7 of 7 from the line in this game. They could have used his free throw accuracy in a couple instances down the stretch. Jakob Poeltl, RJ Barrett in particular, 4 straight misses on 1 possession that kind of did them in. Maybe they still lose anyway, but that was rough stuff. But seeing Quickly get to the line a bunch, that's great. I thought there was some defensive moments from Quickly in this game where he looked really stout, you know, sort of swallowing up drives, getting in the way, being a force of resistance on the perimeter. He's a good rotational defender. We've seen that already. I'm not like he's going to go become Marcus Smart or anything like that, but I do think average to slightly above average team defender who's not getting totally walked at the point of attack is very much the kind of defender Immanuel Quickley can be. He can be a neutral for you, which is, a step up from some of the other guys in this Raptors starting 5. That was all good. But overall, this felt like still kind of a wishy-washy, not great Quickley game. He leads the team with 25 points. He only has 2 assists in this one. Part of that is RJ Barrett, I think by my rough count, unofficial count, missed like 4 or 5 wide open looks created by Quickley. That's tough. It was a rough night for RJ. We'll talk about him later on in the show, I'm sure. But with Quickley, I didn't think there was a lot of balance in this game. It felt very tunnel vision-y, very like, I'm going to go and score. And there were some moments in this game where the Raptors desperately needed that. And I think a couple of at-rim finishes go down later in this game, and things are looking a little bit different. You're feeling a little bit differently. But ultimately, he goes 3 of 11 from 2-point range, and he continues to struggle inside the arc. You know, he's getting to that floater range quite a bit. He's not quite getting to the rim a ton. He's not finishing either super well right now, though I still believe the floater is going to come back. I would be shocked if at any point, or if at no point during the next 4.5 years of his contract, does he kind of not figure out the floater game, because that was a huge hallmark of his game in New York. It was one of the deadliest shots from any guard in the NBA, essentially. He got to floater range. It was automatic. And I think that's going to eventually come back in time. Maybe I'm foolish. Maybe I'm drinking the floater Kool-Aid too much. But I've watched a lot of Immanuel Quickley. I've been kind of, as the Raptors have been in the wilderness, the Knicks have probably been the second most often viewing team of mine. God, words, sentences, English, whatever. I watched a lot of Quickley, and that floater was just so money. I think it's going to come back at some point here, and it has to, right? Quickley's got to be a better 2-point scorer, full stop. And the games where he does go off and it's powered by his 3-point juice, but the 2-point stuff isn't quite there, you're only getting sort of the half impact of Immanuel Quickley. I think his handle looks a lot better. He's getting paint touches on his drive. He's keeping the handle alive more than he was before. These are positive steps, but eventually when you get into the range of the rim and you're within 6 feet, you got to be putting it down. And I think, that's sort of the next step in the progression. Quickley is, I think there's like sort of a wide range of levels of optimism on him. I'm certainly more on the sort of pro Quickley. I think he's going to end up being pretty good end of the spectrum, but the 2-point shooting is the big thing, right? That's got to come around a little bit to complement his 3-point shooting. Otherwise, he's going to become someone who defenses can more easily scheme for, right? You sell out to stop him on the pull-up. You sell out to run him off the line, and he's not going to burn you the same way he can from deep, from inside. That's just kind of basic scouting and defense. But yeah, again, there was a lot of good stuff from Quickley in this game too. It was kind of bizarre. You also have the underperformance of Scotty Barnes and RJ Barrett on offense, which I think those are sort of one-off. You don't expect that as the baseline for these guys. Scotty Barnes in this game had a really hard time scoring from the office that he's kind of made his own. That short mid-range over the last little bit, I think he missed a lot of those shots that he's been knocking in with great regularity of late and has been kind of automatic on. He goes 5 of 14 in this game. Not great, but I think that's sort of a low nadir in the Scotty Barnes up and down arc of the season. And then RJ Barrett, I thought, was brutal in this game. Maybe one of his worst games as a Raptor, honestly. He goes 4 of 16, and it's not one of these situations like earlier in the year where he's carrying too much burden without Scotty in the lineup and he's having these crooked shooting lines. No, this is a crooked shooting line with the lineup around him that's supposed to have him flourish. 0 of 8 from downtown is just a killer. And for those who are skeptics of RJ Barrett's three-point shooting, this was a game that you sort of put in the column of, yeah, no, this is more the true shooter that he actually is. He's going to have streaky times where he hits them, and then a lot of the times you can't really count on him, and defenses are not going to care. And, more nights like this, and defenses are certainly going to just say, all right, we'll live with a steady stream of wide open RJ Barrett threes and trust that he's not going to knock him down. 0 of 8 obviously is a crazy bad shooting variance game, but that's not what you want. And defensively, saw a couple instances of like nice defensive stands in this game. For the most part, continues to get kind of worked on that end. Cade Cunningham, Tobias Harris, like anyone he was switched on to seemed like they were going to work, and some big crunch time buckets were scored with RJ Barrett as the main defender by Cade, by Tobias. Not ideal. And then again, on the other sort of flip thing, you get this game from the bench where they're fantastic and they look awesome, and you're getting this thing from the bench you haven't gotten in years, which is solid enough reserve play to compensate when the starters don't totally have it. Seasons past, it's been if the starters are great, like that's awesome, but the bench is going to give it back. And if the starters are bad, the bench is just going to give you no chance of staying in the game. The Raptors stayed in this game because the bench was freaking incredible, and Chris Boucher was on an ungodly heater, and Bruce Brown had his best game of the season. I even thought Kelly Olynyk was really good in this game in his minutes. Like, there was good stuff here, and part of being a serious team is finding ways to hang in games even when your best guys don't have it, and they did that in this one. I think you're maybe a little less encouraged because a lot of the guys who were awesome were probably not guys who are going to be around here for the long haul. Boucher, Bruce Brown, even Kelly Olynyk, this is not guys who are part of the grander solution for this team in the next few years. But still, like, it's a game where, like, the bench did what benches are supposed to do, which is offer insurance to starters. The starters were bad, certainly, and that is, I think, the prevailing thing here, right? If the starters are going to keep playing poorly, you can't expect bench performances like that every night. Chris Boucher is not going to be around forever to have these ridiculous heaters, and you're going to have to get more steady play from your starters, which they've just not gotten so far. And that's going to carry us into the next segment where we ask the question, what if the starters stink? We'll get to that coming up in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by Ultimate College Basketball HC. Want to take a moment to tell you about a brand new mobile game, which you can go download. It is Ultimate College Basketball HC. If you ever dreamed of being a college basketball head coach, this is your chance to step into those shoes. Ultimate College Basketball HC. With it, you control every single detail of your program, from recruiting players and hiring coaching staffs to overseeing training camps, handling NIL deals, and managing scholarships. It's all in your hands. When it comes to game time, you get to drop offensive plays and set your strategy. The way you play won't just affect your current season, but the overall future of your program at large. It's a game that lets you feel the full weight of what it means to be a head coach and lead your team to glory. Here's a special offer for Locked On NBA listeners. Go check it out. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCBB, all caps, inside the game store to get a free boost for your program. It's the perfect way to kickstart your coaching career. To download Ultimate College Basketball HC, just visit ultimate-cbb.com or look it up on the app stores, that is. Ultimate College Basketball HC. Begin your head coaching legacy today. Today's show is also brought to you by our good friends over at Game Time, the single best place to go buy tickets for the sporting events you want to go to. It's also concert, theater shows, comedy shows, whatever it might be. You can go and peruse all the events and pick out the best tickets. And Game Time Picks is going to tell you exactly what those best tickets are, because they filter out the fluff. They just show you the best deals and the best seats for the events you want to go to. As you get closer to game time, the ticket prices are going to go down as well, which is a great thing. Maybe you're on a whim, you decide you want to go to a Raptors game. They're playing the Warriors tonight. Maybe 6 o'clock comes around and you say, hey, I'm not doing anything. Maybe I'll go check out the Raptors take on the Warriors. Steph Curry in town. Well, don't know how many times that's going to happen still from here to the end of his career. Maybe you want to go see Steph in person. You can grab some tickets, and the closer you go to game time, the cheaper those tickets will be on the Game Time app. Go check them out. It's a great thing. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Down the Game Time app. Create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Back at it here on your Monday edition of Locked On Raptors, talking about the Toronto Raptors losing to the Pistons 123-114. And the big takeaway here, and is the big takeaway, the big thing to watch for in every single one of these games for the next little while, is how are the starters performing? And in this game, the answer was terrible. not a good game for the starters. And so far, in what has been, a small 1 week sample of seeing the starting lineup play, things have not gone as I think the front office, if you gave them truth serum, would have hoped with this group. They were not good at all in this game against the Detroit Pistons. They were a minus 16 in their 18 minutes. That's really bad. Losing by nearly a point a minute, not what you want to be doing. And it goes into now a 4-game, 62-minute sample of the starters looking pretty rough. 102.3 offensive rating, 122 defensive rating, a minus 19.7 per 100 possessions net rating for your Toronto Raptors starting lineup. Very bad. There is no two ways to slice those numbers. However, it's a tiny sample, and we need more time to actually glean what this group is all about. And like I said, I talked about it all off season, talked about it this season as we waited to see the starters. There was legit reason for optimism with this group. The starters last year with Gary Trent Jr. in place of Grady Dick, which to me is kind of a wash. Gary Trent Jr., I think maybe a tiny bit better defender than Grady, though I don't think much more. And I think Grady is just like a dynamic offensive player who tilts the defense and has gravity, is already beyond what Gary Trent Jr. was this team, as mostly a stand still, catch and shoot guy who would walk his way into some mid-range pull-ups from time to time. I think Grady's like a better, more dynamic offensive player than Gary Trent Jr. already. And so there's a bit of a trade-off there. But again, the defense from Gary wasn't exactly thrilling or anything like that last year. And that lineup was damn good against real teams in the one substantial stretch that they got to play together last year. It was 10 games in February where the team went 5-5. They had big games against the Thunder where they hung tight, and they won a couple against the Pacers, if I recall. There were real games in this stretch of games and real opponents, that is. And the starters were good. They were a plus 11.8 net rating over the course of 350 something possessions, 100 and something minutes. Not a massive sample by any means, but one of the bigger samples we had for any lineup last year. And they were good. And I think the pieces offensively, very obviously to me, are still a better collection of offensive pieces than a 102.3 offensive rating, which is miserable. It would be among the worst in the NBA, or definitely the worst in the NBA this year, worse than sub Wizards level. You don't want to be having a sub Wizards offense when you have your starting lineup on the floor. It's been very bad so far. And so what does it mean if this holds up? And at what point do we really start to sort of ring the alarm bells, I suppose, are the questions. And I do think the next 15 games or so, as the Raptors have this stretch in January, February, before the schedule gets real creamy down the stretch, and they play a bunch of teams that you're not really going to be able to sort of glean a whole lot from if they beat because they're terrible. And they may be kind of doing their own stealth tank thing by then to ensure that they're not giving up games in the lotto standings to these very bad teams. The next 15 games are kind of the runway here. And it's a shame that we didn't get this runway available and cleared until January, right? The first 2.5 months of this season were supposed to be about getting more information on the starters. And even after 15 games, we're probably not going to have all that substantial a sample of the starters, but it's going to be all we got to work with. And it'll be the biggest sample we've gotten yet, provided everybody stays healthy. As I say this, Emmanuel Quickley is questionable for the game against the Warriors tonight, which would inhibit the whole information gathering thing once again. Hopefully he's available to go. Either way, it's there's a lot of things that could come out of the starters really pissing the bed over the next little while here, the way they have over the first week that they've played together. 62 minutes is nothing. If you get that up to 250 minutes, 300 minutes, then you start to be able to kind of, pull some conclusions, even though those are still going to be noisy numbers. It takes a long, long time for lineup data to really stabilize. And in most cases, you maybe get 1 to 5 lineups around the entire NBA in a given year that get enough minutes to be really declarative about that lineup rules or that lineup stinks. And usually the lineups that stink don't get to that level of minutes because they get pulled. In this case, I think you just have to give the starters all the run you can right now. I know they're not winning minutes right now. Part of that is good if you're someone who's really fixated on boosting lotto standings. There's upsides to them losing minutes right now while also gathering information. As much as you'd like the information you gather to be positive and encouraging, it's still important to be gathering the information if it's bad, because that informs decisions to come as well, right? I am still pretty all right with the Scotty IQ of it all, right? Scotty is someone who, with his two-way impact, is going to be, I think, worth his max deal. 25% of the cap is not that much, and it's going to go down over the course of the life of the deal. That's going to be something that you can totally live with. I think Scotty Barnes is like the second best player on a very good team. Already feels like that's something that's very much on the table for him, and I still don't think it's off the table that he can be the best player on a good playoff team. Still jury very much out on that one. But as far as like a guy who has like top 50 impact in the NBA, home run, no doubt, 100%. He's a 25% max guy. I don't think you feel bad about that at all. Emmanuel Quickly, $32.5 million is not cheap by any means, but again, the cap is going down or going up. The percentage of the cap that deal is going to represent is going to go down over time. And he's already paid like a middle of the road starter. He's not been playing like a middle of the road starter yet. And there's certainly, if this is the player that Emmanuel Quickly is for the next 5 years, then certainly that deal is not going to look great. I also don't think this is going to be the player Emmanuel Quickly is for the next 5 years. These things change fast, right? Guys go in and everyone looks at their deal and says, oh, that's terrible. And then all of a sudden they have great seasons and it's like, wow, maybe that deal's not so bad. A couple of the names thrown around. We were talking about this a little in the Locked On Raptors Discord this morning, but like Tyler Hero, DeAndre Hunter, Andrew Wiggins, all of these guys last year, you would have said their deals were utterly toxic. You can't move those deals to save your life. And now all those guys are playing well, and those deals are fine to good. And these things change quickly. No pun intended. Emmanuel Quickly is someone who, look, he's still pretty new and green to this whole lead guard thing. There's no doubt. There's refinement to be found. There's balance to be found, as we talked about in the first segment, right? Balancing the when to look for a zone versus when to set everyone else up. And I do think the point guard instincts with him have not quite shone through outside of a couple games so far since he joined the team again. But I do think the point guard brain is there. I do think he's going to sort of refine that element and find that balance. I also think just like lead guard types, these are the types of guys who it's going to be a sort of constant evolution, right? To me, like, I think I'm not trying to make everything about Kyle Lowry, even though everything should be about Kyle Lowry because Kyle Lowry's the best. But like, Kyle Lowry took time. Most guards take time, and most guards in 1 year are not the same guy they're going to be 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line, because it's sort of like a constantly evolving and learning computer type thing, right? You sort of pick up new things, new tricks of the trade, new guard stuff that happens. You refine your strength. You work on the stuff that's not there. Emmanuel Quickly is a noted, hardworking gym rat type, which like doesn't mean everything, doesn't always portend great success, but I'm going to bank on guys like that over guys who don't carry that reputation. Quickly very much does. And again, I don't think the player Quickly is right now in January of 2025 is the player he's going to be in 2, 3, 4 years time. I think there's going to be some refinement, some evolving there. And I do think 32.5 mil is going to look just fine. He's already in the middle tier of point guards in terms of salary. If he's even like the 20th best point guard in the NBA, which is eminently attainable, I think the deal is going to age just fine. At the very worst, is the kind of deal that you can sort of attach really good assets to make an upgrade at some point down the line. We're far, far from that. The book is by no means closed on Emmanuel Quickly. I think him and Scotty are the two guys you feel all right with. Other than that, RJ Barrett's defense is a problem. Grady Dick's defense is a problem. Grady is year 2. Like, there's plenty of growth to be done there as well. The book is far from written. RJ's defense, like, it's been bad every year except for his second season in the NBA where it was fine. Like, we're getting to the point now where the defense is a real concern. I'm not saying you go trade RJ for picks. I think that would be stupid. But, he's probably kind of playing himself into being an innings eater on this team for now, who eventually you have to upgrade down the line, barring a defensive improvement. And the starters' minutes over the next little while are going to help us gauge that, right? I think, how they perform, maybe they kind of mix things up and throw Ochai Agbaji into closed games at times here and there. Maybe that changes and you get some sample on that lineup. But I do think you just got to give the starters, as much as it looks rough right now, as much as the defense looks untenable with Grady and RJ at the 2 and 3, I think you have to just give it as much runway as possible to gain as big a sample as possible from then to just make decisions with, right? You can't be kind of making these decisions blind. There are going to be many decisions to be made in the next summer or in the summer or the next 18 months or so for this team. And the more information you can get, whether the results are good or bad, it's important, valuable info for making the best informed choice of where to take this team build next. And yeah, I think over the next 15 or so games, guys like Grady and RJ, you might come out of these next 15 games looking very differently at what their long-term outlook with the team is. I think, maybe there's some guys in the bench unit, whether it's, maybe Jacoby Walter gets back in the mix, or you continue to see more, good sort of connective role player stuff from Ochai Abaji. Maybe he plays himself more into the starter conversation down the line. All this stuff's going to happen in the next 15 games before the season gets into Mickey Mouse mode. And that's just, all you can do is wait and watch. And I know people are like, you got to change the starters now. You got to change them. They've been bad. They have been bad. It's been 4 games. It's been 62 minutes, which is nothing. And you need to just get a fulsome sample of what they're actually capable of and then react from that. If it's poor, if it's terrible, if there's still a minus 20 net rating in 15 games time, then certainly something's rotten and something needs to be addressed. And they have the wherewithal to do that, right? They have the pick coming in this summer, which could directly address one of their issues, one of their many issues right now. You have the Blazers pick, and you have your future picks and the Pacers pick and all of that. There are ways to go and maneuver and make moves from where they are now to where they want to go. It might not take the shape that they hoped it would coming into the year with the starting 5, but just because the information is ugly doesn't mean it's not valuable and important. And I think you just got to get as much of it as possible, specifically on this starting 5. I mean, they've played 62 minutes and they're already the 3rd most used lineup for the Raptors this year. It speaks to what a wasteland it's been for valuable data over the last little while. You have a chance now to collect some good data, do it and see what happens there and make your decisions from that. And as long as the Raptors are able to adapt and take that info and make decisions with it, maybe you feel less good about their ability to do that after the last few years. I feel like they maybe learn from their mistakes, and, learning can happen and all of that. And they won't overvalue things or sort of, wear rose-colored glasses this time around. Maybe that's foolish. I don't know. But all we can do right now is hope they get as much info as possible on this group and then make decisions from there. That's the mode we're in. It's info gathering season, baby. We'll come back on the other side, round it out with the good, the bad, and the thing I liked, thing I didn't like, thing that was a wee bit intriguing from the Raptors' loss to the Pistons. We'll do that coming up in just 1 second. Today's show is brought to you by a new sponsor, OpenPhone. Running a small business means you're wearing a lot of hats. Your personal phone becomes your business phone, and before you know it, you're juggling customer calls day and night. As your team grows, it becomes impossible to manage everything with just your personal number. That's where one OpenPhone comes in. It's the #1 business phone system designed to help you keep your work and personal life separate. This is a big deal for me. I'm someone who works from home. The lines of when I'm working and when I'm not can be very blurred at times. And having a whole phone system set up that can be my work phone system sounds pretty awesome to me. For just $15 a month, the cost of a few coffees, you get complete transparency and visibility into everything happening with your business phone number. OpenPhone works through an app on your phone or computer and integrates with tools like HubSpot and hundreds of others. It also uses AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, so you'll have a rundown of your calls and action items the second you hang up. And if you miss a call, no problem. Automated messages are sent directly to your customer, ensuring you never miss an opportunity to engage. Right now, OpenPhone is offering 20% off your first 6 months when you go to openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's OpenPhone, OPENPHONE.com/lockedonnba for $20 off for 6 months. OpenPhone.com/lockedonnba. If you have existing phone numbers with another service, OpenPhone will also port them over at no extra charge. Go check them out. OpenPhone. Wrapping it up here, the good, the bad, and the on your, what the hell day is it? Monday edition of Locked On Raptors. Thing I liked, thing I didn't like, thing that's got me a little treat from the latest Toronto Raptors basketball game, the way we wrap up every single episode of this here podcast after the Raptors have played. Let's get to the good. Another truly ridiculous Chris Boucher supernova game. And man, was it awesome. That first quarter on Saturday against the Pistons, 14 points. He has the putback dunk, 4 threes, including an absolute heat check buzzer beater when he very clearly could have just gone in for a dunk. But I respect the hell out of him just saying, you know what? I'm white hot. I'm putting this damn thing up. And the damn thing went in. Super fun stuff from Chris Boucher. He doesn't score after that, which is hilarious. That's very Chris Boucher of him to do that. But that first quarter, super delightful. And savor each one of these, man. It's probably not going to be that much longer that Chris Boucher is doing this type of stuff for the Raptors. And again, he's a whack-a-mole dude. There will be times, surely, as soon as tonight, where it looks ugly. He's getting totally roasted and blown by because he's left his shoes trying to, block a shot that's not going up or whatever it might be. But these Chris Boucher, just complete takeovers off the bench are huge. And like the Raptors have really needed them lately too. Like this is great stuff to see. And even if it's the swan song of Chris Boucher, his final sort of move towards a new team, you love it all the way through. We love Chris Boucher. The bad for me, I said it off the top, but this was probably RJ Barrett's worst game as a Toronto Raptor when you factor in both ends. Just like you can't be getting worked by Tobias Harris in crunch time, brother. Like it's not going to cut it. It's just, and defensively, like the footwork, the side to side, the lateral quick's just not there. Continues to be a really tough off ball defender, loses guys all the time, falls asleep, defending in the half court, in transition, whatever it is. Like RJ Barrett's got a lot on the line when it comes to his future with the Raptors. And look, I am rooting so hard for this to work out with RJ Barrett because having a dude who wants to be here playing in Toronto is like getting like the energy of playing for the home crowd, all of that. It's awesome. It's a wonderful story. And he's such an easy guy to root for. He's been through a lot. It's been a really tough last year for him, but it seems like playing in Toronto has genuinely been a source of joy and happiness and pride for him. And it's fantastic. And it's just at some point, if you're building a basketball team, all that stuff, like it sucks. I wish there was more room for sentimentality and stuff like that in this, but there's clearly not. We've moved past the sentimentality era in the NBA, and it's all about like, what can you do for me on the floor? And I totally think RJ Barrett's offensive game in this one, it's an outlier. He's been a really super efficient scorer for more than a calendar year at this point when he's played with better players and he's not having to carry the day on his own. I don't think that's the problem here. But the defense, when you couple it with a game where he does, go 0 of 8 from 3 and just kind of, has some wonky turnovers and stuff like that. 5 turnovers for him in this game to just 3 assists. Like just a really rough one for RJ Barrett and earned every bit of the -17 he had in this one. And I just like the defense, like it'd be one thing if you had an offensive game like this where the defense was still this backstop, right? I always think of Pascal Siakam in the bubble where, his offense was a nightmare. The offense looked like a guy who had been cooped up in a condo for 5 months. And his defense was like exemplary, unbelievable. It kind of transformed the Raptors entirely and made them into this team that could play small and could do, put its best offensive players on the floor. He was bloody ridiculous. And he still was like a positive contributor in that series because his defense was so damn good. You don't get that with RJ Barrett. You don't get that floor of defense when the offense isn't there. And so when the offensive bad games happen, it just feels super glaring because at both ends, he's taking stuff off the table. And so I don't know what the answer is. The defense just needs to be better, flat out. It needs to improve. There needs to be work on the strength of the adductor muscles to allow him to slide his feet more quickly with guys. I don't know what it is. I'm not a biogeometric, whatever the hell guy who knows how this all works. I didn't take a kinesiology course in college, but like there's got to be something to tap back into here defensively. There have been some moments, a couple of, okay, nice stand on OG in the post and, a couple of forced turnovers and stuff like that in the Pistons game. But overall, he's just taking away so much on that end. And this, I think this was his worst game as a Raptor. It's tough. I'm rooting for him big time though. And, he'll be better. Like this is, again, when he's doing the offense thing, the defense feels a little less dire. But when it's not happening and the shots aren't going down, the defense just kind of comes into focus, and it's really rough stuff. For me is, will Ochai Agbaji be the 5th closer? It was weird in this game. He was deemed available before the game, didn't actually play. You assume it's just sort of an abundance of caution thing that is. You hope he's back and available tonight. And I do think, Grady Dick has been getting sort of yanked out late in these games for defensive reasons. Understandably so. He is kind of doing the chicken with his head cut off thing at times. Weird rotations, missing rotations, switching when he shouldn't be switching, not switching when he should be switching. Just a lot of mistakes defensively from Grady Dick over the last few. And it makes sense that Chris Boucher has been getting that late call, or Bruce Brown even got the late call to close in this one. RJ got a little spell on the bench too, I think for probably defensive reasons as well down the stretch of this game against the Pistons. And I do wonder if Ochai were healthy and available. Like, is he just going to be that 5th closer? And I think that's great. Like, if you can get him in with that closing lineup, playing with RJ, playing with Grady alongside Quickly and Barnes and Pirtle, like maybe you're cooking with something there. or at the very least, you can get some valuable information. Once again, going back to that on that group of players as well. The starters, from before RJ got back from his illness, one of the better lineups the Raptors have on the year is Quickly with Dick, Abaji, Barnes, and Pirtle. Maybe that's something you look at again. Maybe RJ does some 6-man duty. Again, I think we're still ways from that being a thing. You still need to look at the starters and get a full sample. But if you're going to get like a little micro sample of how Ochai looks with Scotty and Quickly and Pirtle and whoever else is the fifth guy, I think that's valuable and important info to gather too. And I think there'll be a better closing team for it once Ochai's back and available to fill in these spots down the stretch. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much for hanging out and listening to the show. We'll be back again on Tuesday. Vivek Jacob will be along as we will talk about Raptors and Warriors on Monday night. In the meantime, please follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend, all that good stuff. It's much appreciated. However you support the show, go to the newsletter. It's on the screen, on the QR code, or the link in the description of the podcast. If you're listening to the audio, you can also go to the Discord. The same link in the description. It's all right there for you. Please join us. It's a great thing over on the Discord. We'll talk to you again on Tuesday. Enjoy Raptors Warriors. Thanks for hanging. Bye. Oh.